Welcome to this discussion about the role of 5G in transport and logistics. I'm Paul Wilson, the Chief Business Officer of the Connected Places Catapult, and I'm joined by a fantastic group of people today, experts in their fields in roads, ports, autonomous vehicles. So let's start by introducing ourselves to our audience. Sam, do you want to say hi?
Yeah, hi everybody, I'm Sam Lee. I'm Senior Innovation Officer at Transport for Greater Manchester. I'm currently working on the Smart Junction project in Greater Manchester to look at the role of 5G in accelerating and improving efficiencies for connected and autonomous vehicles at the same time. So,
brilliant.
To come.
We'll come back to you in a minute. Eman.
Emma Martin. I'm responsible for political affairs and government relation within Bosch Group and involved in several activities within 5G in the UK. We have different projects in autonomous driving for trucks for 5G and also manufacturing. But today probably we'll talk more about logistics.
Brilliant. We'll come back to you in a minute. Catherine, welcome.
Thank you, Paul. I'm Catherine Gall, and I'm head of sales for EDSCOM, which is the division of Cellnex UK. I've had roughly 7.5 years experience in private networks, both 4G and 5G. And I'm going to talk to you today a bit about some progress that we've made with the Port of Felixstowe and a DCMS 5G trial.
Fantastic. Right, we're going to come back to you and hear about Felixstowe. Steve, welcome.
Hi, I'm Stephen Unsworth. I'm the Corporate IS Programme Manager for Cellnex UK, and I've been looking after the DCMS-funded trial for Bristol ports. So looking at smart junctions, drone security, and and we'll talk more about that, I guess.
Yeah, we will. We're going to go around the country. So Sam, fill us in on the Smart Junctions project that's been happening in Manchester.
Yeah, so to give a quick overview, the Smart Junction projects is look at using computer vision cameras to help us better manage traffic. A traditional solution only just capture the vehicle, but doesn't capture the type of the vehicle. So we're using the benefit of the 5G bandwidth as well as low latency to explore whether or not we can do network management at a centralized level. So that we can control the city as a whole along this strategic corridor as a whole. And there's definitely links to kind of building the foundation for connected vehicles, as well as autonomous vehicles, and as well as creating this foundation for connectivity in a post-COVID environment for people to access services as a whole.
How many junctions in Manchester does this project touch?
Yeah, so currently this project is placed in the strategic corridor northwest of the city. That is a main thorough route into the city, connecting 10 junctions together as a whole. That has a number of major kind of crossing points along it. And we're looking at how we can prioritize not just your buses and your logistic vehicles, but also electric scooters and bikes, to have that holistic human view on how we manage mobility as a whole.
So what's changed is, as the project gets going and finishes, is you've got intelligent insight into what the traffic is at the different junctions. So that's
yes,
optimizes that.
Yeah, it's the intelligent insight, but more importantly, it's the interventions. So it's not just knowing about the various data that we have. So just a high level example, we can now see where if cyclists are dwelling next to, let's say, a bus, we can start looking at ways of prioritizing it to minimize exposure, for example, for vulnerable road users such as pedestrian and cyclists. So it is the intelligence for us to make real actions where we traditionally weren't able to, but using 5G is the low latency to do that at a massive corridor and eventually city level.
Fantastic. And how far have you got with the project so far?
Yeah, so there's been some key challenges. I think a lot of the other partners will probably talk about similar around accessing equipment as a whole and making sure the backhaul. But we've had the equipment up and running now for a few months, working off 4G. We're now in the process of switching that over to the 5G kind of connectivity and linking that to the low latency in the back office in the cloud system as a whole. So we're expecting full live to go towards October, with the trial running all the way till the end of the program in March.
Fantastic progress. I know, Eman, that at Bosch, you guys have been doing a lot of work on autonomous vehicles and transport systems. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Absolutely. I mean, I connect to what Sam just said as a industry, and you can see this in transport and logistics, the industry in transformation. When we talk about autonomous driving, was one of the cases can be used for 5G. But not only that, also to, if you like, satisfy the net zero carbon agenda from the government, then we talk about automated driving or autonomous, generally speaking, with 5G. So another technological opportunity, if you like, is the advancement being made in self-driving systems, while the commercialization, if you like, of self-driving in cars is still maybe a dream of many consumers, but autonomous trucks is actually happening and can transform the logistic industries moving forward, making it safer, swifter, and as well as less human errors. So we have lots of projects in that side of things, trying to test not only the road freight in the, if you like, on the highway, but how could we make the life of logistic companies easier? Because you will connect, for example, these automated trucks with an IoT system or a digital driven system that actually can track these deliveries from one location to another and can give you a huge, if you like, exposure to the data, which is related about the deliveries, if it's on time or in case deliveries, but as well as what needs to be done from formalities to do so. So I'm trying to say is that automated driving as a technology for trucks, like platooning, for example, there was a trial, if you remember, on the M3 about platooning for trucks, connected trucks to drive in each other to actually create efficiency and use the 5G latency, and as well as the live streaming data between the connected automated trucks and also the infrastructure. So you're talking about vehicle to infrastructure, vehicle to vehicle connectivity. But what I also would like to point out that this is becoming very essential for the industry to look into automated trucks and as well as connectivity after post-Brexit or post-Brexit, if you like, because the borders and the ports we will hear later, you have such a huge amount of formalities been occurred because of the new situation. And that means is that we have to be more intelligent about the way how we deal with these informations, and as well as creating an intelligent transport ecosystems combined with robotic automations to actually have a more smarter, if you like, handling of all of these logistic data and creating a better service. So you could see that 5G is essential actually for low latency, for fastness, speediness of it, but as well as, and I'm sure Kath will talk about it later, private network opened a huge new opportunities for having a secure, for example, network from cyber attacks, etc. But I will stop here and maybe we'll talk about it later.
I just asked two. I think you've picked up on the efficiency required that the automation brings, particularly in processing at borders. Is there also an environmental consideration too around decarbonising things as we get to more electronic vehicles? And I know Bosch is a leader in that space.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It's not only that, because you really can manage through the efficiency of the ordering system and the deliveries to have a specific tailored rules for these tailored routes for these trucks. So it means is you will indeed reduce emissions. You will have obviously better, I wouldn't say zero emissions, but better managed system to then have a better environment effect. But that can also work on the whole digitalizations of data, because you will use then less, if you like, paper formats or whatever, and that will be all paperless, digitalized in the system, and will allow you actually to have a better overview as well. But what is lacking now, so we need also to differentiate that some of the activities may be what we're looking at from the platform side of things can be managed through 4G, some not. So if we're talking about live streaming capabilities, or for example, distinguishing packages deliveries from one location to another, probably you're better off if you have 5G because of the latency and fastness of the network. But absolutely, whatever we're doing with automated trucks, because you are actually controlling exactly the energy system more in an automated way and getting, if you like, the human behavior out of it, you have more control in reducing emissions, generally speaking.
Fantastic. Okay, let's move over to Catherine and Felixstowe, where nearly half of the UK's containers arrive into the country at Felixstowe. Catherine, tell us what you've been doing in Felixstowe with 5G.
So Felixstowe 5G was cooked up as part of a DCMS project for 5G Create. The aim for Felixstowe was to utilize 5G's increased capacity and reduced latency in order to do things that would create a safer environment for their staff, more efficient management of their assets. So one of the things they are working on, and it is still in trial, is remote controlled cranes, essentially. And with the remote control, there is a huge requirement for streaming video. And that is a wonderful thing for 5G because of the amount of capacity 5G has, but it's also not so great for the way that 5G is skewed right now toward the consumer, which means most of 5G is download, i.e. I'm going to get faster Netflix, and not upload. I'm going to be able to get the stream video from the crane so I can see exactly where I'm picking up or putting down a container. The other thing is low latency. And in order to run a remote control crane, you need that low latency. Another thing that the Port of Felixstowe is working on is preventative maintenance. And the thing with preventative maintenance and 5G is there's going to be a lot of points, a ton of points to manage. And with 5G, you have the ability to manage hundreds and thousands of different devices.
And what's the state of the project in Felixstowe? Are you planning stage or rollout stage? Where have you got to so far?
So Felixstowe is partially rolled out. It's not completely rolled out. They are finding some challenges. And the challenges lie somewhat in this upload download that I spoke about with 5G, but it's also laying with the power that the Ofcom shared access spectrum is allowed. Now, most ports in the UK are classified as urban, and urban, according to shared access from Ofcom, is low power, which means you have to have a lot of base stations. And I don't think it's that efficient. So I know that the Port of Felixstowe has made Ofcom aware of this, as have we made Ofcom aware of this, because this has wider implications for anyone trying to do 5G in a port or a port-like scenario.
And you're involved in private networks for 5G, probably beyond Felixstowe as well, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about some of the other projects you've been working on?
So some of the other projects whose names I cannot share with you, I'm sorry, are everything from enabling a port to, again, do preventative maintenance, also to do an AI that enables them to know when someone has walked into an area that they shouldn't be in. Again, it's all about safety. How quickly do we do this? It's putting it into the digital twin, putting a bunch of data into a digital twin so they know exactly when to act. It's being able to manage a pipeline that's located on a site that enables it's going to be a lot safer because we know when things are going bad quicker, and we can manage it in a more reliable manner. One of the things I found with a lot of the pipeline management solutions that are out there pre-5G is that there's not a failover for them. If you get one that fails, many things fail behind them, and that's a huge safety issue for something like a chemical plant.
Okay, so you see a lot, everywhere there's been an interest in private 5G networks, particularly in heavy industry, hasn't there, I think?
Absolutely. So I know that's not our conversation. Apologies for going into heavy industry,
that's fine.
But there's just so much.
Yeah, that's fine. Right, let's move over to the Port of Bristol. Hi, Steve. Tell us what's been happening there.
Yeah, so we're kind of working in collaboration, obviously Cellnex and the various other partners, Sparnaticor, Adva as well, and then on the use cases, the University of Bristol for the goods tracking and the drone security, and also with the Bristol City Council on the smart junction. Obviously, the project overall is managed by WECA. And yeah, we're just at the moment at the test lab stage, so we're setting up a staging lab. That's almost complete, and we should be ready to start doing some testing, checking end-to-end testing, and some connectorized testing of some of the use cases very, very shortly, which will be some good progress for us. Obviously, I think the project was initially set up by the DCMS to when Bristol Port was after the free port status, but unfortunately they didn't win that. So we're looking in terms of the goods tracking to move stuff from the port to another site about 30 miles away, track the goods down there. So obviously you could, in the free port status, we could be taking stuff away from the port to process it, ready to ship it around, whilst obviously having it secured. Obviously the smart junction outside on St Andrews Road, just outside the port, very busy area. Looking at how we can make the traffic flow more efficient.
What does the smart junction do? How is it smart? What is it doing, or what will it do?
It's looking to increase the traffic flow. Obviously, at the moment it gets very busy, especially at peak hours, and it's looking how 5G can better manage the junctions in order that the traffic can flow through and cut out delays. I think there's quite a lot. We've obviously the traffic coming off the port. They're looking at how they can improve the journey time, across that.
Very good. And tell me about the drones. What are the drones going to be doing?
Drones. So obviously around the security of the port. So we're working with a company called Unmanned Life, and the use case obviously around just managing, if there's any security issues, maintenance type issues, just to flag those up earlier.
So it's a little similar to what's happening in Felixstowe with predictive maintenance and safety as well. Very good. Okay, that's been great to introduce all the different projects. Now, I'm going to pose a couple of questions. I don't mind who comes back in first, but if you were to rank what's going to drive 5G adoption in transport, do you think it's going to be efficiency issues? Do you think it's going to be environmental issues? Or do you think it's going to be something different from those two? What's your different reflections? Efficiency first, environment first, or something else?
I would say environment. And I mean, with what's going on with climate change and everything that we've been talking about with environment is a huge issue. Back in the days working with Heathrow, one of the things that we measured through the 4G private network was emissions. When an airplane would park up, are they turning off and plugging in? Where are the emissions coming from? And in the case of Bristol Port, I mean, so much of that smart junction is about moving those vehicles through, so they are not expelling emissions onto Bristol in that area of Bristol Port. They're moving them through quickly.
Right.
It's traffic management, but it is very much environment. And for a variety of different ports, the things that Eamon's talking about, it's moving a lot of these vehicles that are manned, so that's safety, but it's also moving them to electric and then autonomous vehicles. So it's both safety and environment. So I really think environment is going to take a huge leap forward with why people are looking at 5G. Anybody else?
Maybe I don't contradict you, Keith. I never contradict you, and I think definitely environment is a huge issue, and it will come more and more because of also the net zero carbon targets by 2030. I think efficiency definitely maybe in similar way, because if you think of post-Brexit, that now you lack on having enough drivers, because you have to actually, if you like, move the trucks in a more slower way. So you could see actually the huge amount of vacancies of drivers. That means the economy will push the digitalization even further to use, for example, automated trucks, etc., like Kath said. But another area definitely we need to consider here, and maybe compare. For example, if you compare prior to COVID, the whole digital economy and our discussion about 5G is totally changed now. Now is not more discussions about the usability of 5G or not. Now is which use cases we have to work with 5G. Because before COVID, we had digitalization economy of about 10% in the UK. And after COVID, we're talking about 45%, including the online shopping and all of these areas, which is affected also the logistic and as well as the deliveries. If you can imagine now how many cars delivering back and forth. So I will say definitely what Kath said in the environment, but at the same time, efficiency will force the industry to use more and more, if you like, autonomous vehicles or wherever, which can make them more efficient.
So just to pick up on that, Iman, I think pelotoning freight lorries, we've seen them moving around on I've seen them on YouTube. I haven't seen them on real life, I'll be honest. They're autonomous, but I wonder how mature the vehicle to infrastructure part of that equation is. So they've got the autonomous part of the vehicle moving autonomously, but is the maturity there around the actual use of digital infrastructure for 5G? Because many of the autonomous vehicle people are excited about building their vehicles autonomously, and they kind of don't necessarily understand the connection to the 5G bit. So how mature is that bit now? Do we see standards emerging about the connectivity to the infrastructure and how the infrastructure can actually work with the vehicle? Yeah.
So infrastructure is definitely lacking for sure, but we need to distinguish between the technologies what we are talking about. So when we talk about autonomy and the level of autonomy, because I'm sure, Paul, you heard about level 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And 4, where we are talking about driverless 100%, and the control is more to the system rather than with the driver. However, there are two technologies in autonomy. So most of the trucks, they actually drive on motorways in the long hours. That is very easy technology, and actually it's about comparing lines and about controlling the distance between you and the truck in front of you or the car in front of you, and you always straightforward. There are some use cases you have to connect to the infrastructure in case that you have traffic lights conjunctions or wherever, then you indeed need infrastructure, but you need a real-time connections to the if you like, to the infrastructure, and that's why 5G play a huge role here. But we see, for example, back to your question, how far that is, we see that autonomy in trucks will come easier than in passenger vehicles, for example, because you are talking about, as I said, use cases which is easy to manage. When you get to an urban area, let's say you are in London, in Pennington Street, where you have a lot of objects around you, we talk about 360 degrees autonomous technologies, and then becoming complicated, which we think that probably will be towards 2025, 2028 to be achieved. So it really depends on which use cases we are talking about, Paul.
I think I'm going to flip it to Sam here. Rather than talk about London, let's talk about Manchester.
No, so just quickly jump on the autonomous point. I think 5G has a unique play as well in terms of remote driving. It could be that actually for those more complex urban centers, we have the capability to take remote control and navigate, using the low latency to drive in those areas so that you have autonomous operation on strategic highways and actual control on the ground, during those complex environments. I think as well I agree, on the COVID crisis has flipped logistics on its head. It's no longer people going to services. It's actually really much the other way around. So how do we accommodate for that? So this is why, I guess, for us, look at the Smart Junctions project, and going back to your question around which pillars is the critical one with UK hosting COP26, environmental is as a whole. But I think what we need to really realize is that to achieve those environmental kind of objectives on decarbonisation and clean air and clean growth, there's a cost associated with it. And actually it's going to cost us more. But what 5G enables us to do is substantially reduce that cost and make that investment palatable as a whole to really drive it forward. And that links into the wider kind of pillar, I feel, that isn't within the three that you talked about, Paul, around commercial sustainability on solutions. I think innovation and demonstrations are great, to see the art of the possible, but coming up with sustainable business model to keep it going and for kind of government and local authorities to work out revenue stream on maintaining and the asset is critical to make sure to facilitate new technologies coming forward, such as autonomous vehicles.
One conundrum for us, I think, is that every time we optimize roads and make them work better and more efficiently, the only thing that happens is we get more cars.
Yeah.
And so is it the case that if we optimize our junctions with 5G, we just facilitate even more congestion on our roads? And how is Manchester thinking about that?
So I'm not going to be very popular for saying this as a whole, but with the Smart Junction project, it allows us to shift the focus that may not necessarily be car dominant for our junction. So we could start prioritizing things like scooters, active travel, and other modes, and provide them a safe and seamless journey that actually it makes sense to make those journeys through those sustainable modes. I think on the flip side, the 5G connectivity allows people potentially to work remotely. So one of the trends we're starting to see is regeneration of our local towns, where people are accessing things within 50-minute neighborhoods type proposition. Are we going to start seeing co-working spaces in these town centers where people are going to go there, just to work remotely rather than being at home as a whole? So the technology is allowing us to adapt, I guess, to the new behavior and new lifestyle that's emerging, and it's how we align the technology to our various policy objectives.
I'm just going to probe one more time on that issue, because it's, I think, a very important issue for us all, which is how does a 5G junction get used to promote active travel? Are you making it easier for a bike and a scooter to get through the junction than a car? Is that how?
Yes. So just to give you an example, when we talk about kind of prioritizing for electric scooters and bikes, the camera technology by Vivacity could potentially see the vehicle approaching and provide a seamless green wave for them to go through. There's a number of reports and research to show that the stopping and starting contribute to accidents for cyclists as a whole. And there's also opportunity linking to connected active travel modes. So imagine, we can, using 5G, know exactly where bikes are, and we can almost group them up to say, if you'll cycle at this speed, you'll hit the green wave together to maximize those capacity. So in some ways, it's replicating some of the technology we're looking at to use for cars and logistics, but applying it to active travel and micromobility.
Sounds very important to me. Active travel is the key for our futures, isn't it?
Right, people don't like the rain.
We've got a few minutes left. I'm going to hand it open to Steve or Catherine, Iman. Let's think of a closing statement of how is 5G going to change our logistics, our travel, and what time frame are we going to start to see things happening in, moving from trials and test beds into production at scale? Can I start with you, Catherine?
So kind of building on what Iman said, I think the key for any kind of new technology development is a driver, something that is compelling it to go forward. And Emin made a really great point, which is there are no drivers. There's a reduced workforce of actually people who want to drive lorries, who want to drive cranes, who want to go up and drive a key crane on a port, who want to go back and forth, pick up a container, drop off the container, pick up another container, drop off another container. And there's just a reduced workforce for that. And because of that, that will start to drive uptake of 5G, at least in our ports and other logistics areas. And that kind of leads me over to handing over to Iman, hopefully, who will give us the connected vehicle, the autonomous vehicle view going forward.
Catherine, you really sum it up for me. So I think what I would like to say is 5G is not an option, is a reality, and it's coming with whole force. And all of the experts today just actually confirm it. And I will really close there. Maybe hand it to Steve.
Thank you.
Steve, you're on.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously I come from a program point of view, so not as technical as some of the guys on the call and stuff like that. But I think obviously we're in the trials kind of phase, and we're trying to prove use cases at the moment. And like I said, to go forward, how we can make that commercially viable for people to use it and drive the uptake. Yeah, so I mean, obviously there's challenges in, you know, Catherine spoke around the Ofcom stuff, and I think we'll see that we need to get through that, because obviously the cost to put these out will be prohibitive in private networks if we can't address that kind of area. But I guess starting to prove the efficiency, etc., around ports, etc., will drive demand, I guess.
The regulatory change is part of the rollout. Sam, let's have your closing thoughts.
Yeah.
On
there's so many items I agree with. I think 5G is here. It's just within the next 1 or 2 years, we'll see a massive acceleration, whereas see MNO heavily investing in small cell now, where traditionally it was very much around macro infrastructure. I think the two areas that I think we need to make sure we consider is creating that seamless transition, so that solutions that get created in Greater Manchester can be replicated in Bristol, London, and other cities. So we're not reinventing the wheel, and that seamless transition on the network side of things. And then the other opportunity I think for UK is around, with that open architecture, the resilience and the cybersecurity aspects of it, how that architecture can be made open while at the same time secure, to provide the resilience for connected vehicles, to provide, you know, privacy for logistics and freight, you know, where transporting potentially sensitive materials. How do we bring all those together as a whole? So yeah, it's a really exciting time, and it's more to come.
Very good. Well, what an interesting lot of discussion. One topic we haven't really addressed here, I think, is the future of flight and last mile logistics for drones, and the increased amount of electric planes, and the increased amount of freight travel in drones. And I think maybe that's something that's going to surprise us as we watch the next few years roll out, that we will see what the estimates say, something like 70,000 drones in the sky at any one time in the UK, which just seems a little bit frightening right now. But with digital air traffic control coming from 5G. So, but that will leave that one for another day. It just leaves me to say thank you ever so much to Sam, Catherine, Iman, and Steve. You've been listening to the Logistics 5G UK team. We are the best one. Thanks for listening, and have a great event.